You love masala chai. You love our masala tea.
Yep, I do.
So Jane loves masala chai. Here is to masala chai. A big round of applause. So Jane, I want you to answer one question. This is your first visit after we have established Jane Goodall Institute India. What is your message for our young people?
Well, my message for the young people, I've more or less said, but I think with Roots and Shoots, we are growing, caring, compassionate citizens. And I think the young people of India will be part of what I see as a global family, supporting each other across the distance. Luckily, we have things like Zoom and such like, so that virtual meetings can be arranged. We try and bring people together face to face. So the young people, you know, they learn about each other's cultures and they learn about each other's problems. So the young people of India will be in Roots and Shoots. If they join Roots and Shoots, they'll be learning about other cultures. They'll be learning about not only problems in other places, but solutions. And they'll be learning that what they do does make a difference. They'll be learning that my life matters. They'll be learning I have a role to play. And eventually people find their roles. So it is growing citizens who will behave differently, and there'll be a new mindset. That's what has to happen. And it's the young people who are going to lead us there.
Thank you. Jane, can we take 2 questions from the audience?
Sorry?
Can we take 2 questions from the audience?
Yes.
Any questions? Okay. All right, yes.
Hi, Jane. Thank you so much for being Jane Goodall.
For being what?
Thank you so much for being Dr. Jane Goodall.
Well, thank my mother, and I suppose my father too.
I don't know how many people here would know that there's something called as avian botulism, which is happening at the Sambar Lake in Rajasthan. And my son has gone to volunteer there with an NGO called Hope and Beyond to save the birds. So he's left his college right now and he's there volunteering for the birds. And he sends me pictures every day. He wanted to be here and be here with you. He couldn't be. I'm here on his behalf. I'd like you to say his name and give him a note of encouragement, because sometimes he feels it's hopeless. There is no reason. How much can we do? He also has his own rescue team called MJF Rescue in Jaipur.
Can we just keep the question a little bit short, please?
He helps save the snakes there. So,
Yeah. Can you come and...
His name is Axel. Axel de Lima.
Give a message of hope for a young boy who is losing all the hope.
Well, I think my entire talk was, meant to be answering that question. I've given you my reasons for hope, and I don't think I can add to those reasons for hope.
Thank you. Shall we take, and then we'll take that one.
Hello, ma'am. I am Harshit Kumar and my friend Naveen from Tata Institute. And we have taught various kids because we think that child is the father of man. And like you, we are also trying to make some difference. But sometimes we get upset because the society looks at us with different face. They think that we are doing something unusual. So how do you manage that unusual face of the society? Thank you.
How do I manage?
The unusual face of the society when the question, you're doing the good thing, but the society doesn't understand.
Well, when society doesn't understand, that means there's something wrong with the way that I'm putting the message across to them. So I have to say to myself, okay, how can I get this message across? And one thing that's really, really important, that sometimes people are trying to argue with somebody who thinks differently from them. They are, arguing with the person's mind. And I find that, yes, listen to the person first. Maybe you can learn something about why your message hasn't reached them. But for me, the way to reach people is through stories. You have to reach the heart. And I think we'll reach our true human potential only when head and heart work together. You have to scoot closer because I don't hear the echo.
A question, please.
Thank you so much. Is it audible? Yes. Thank you so much for doing all the work you do. I read about you in grade 5 and have been a big fan since then. I've also been plant-based since 3 years, and I'm very passionate about veganism. So my question is do you think it should be good to make factory farming illegal? And if yes, what are some ways in which we can do things to change laws of big countries?
Should we make factory farming illegal? That's really, I'd love to make it illegal. I think it should be illegal. The route to make it illegal is going to be very, very difficult because there are major, major interests from the industrial agricultural people. And already in many parts of Europe, there's a huge hit back from the industrial agriculture against any attempt to make factory farming illegal. I think it's going to be, not the government, it's going to be the people. More and more people going towards a plant-based diet, that will really, really help. And it already is beginning to make a difference. So we must not always leave everything to governments and businesses. We've got to take some responsibility ourselves. And the young people are beginning to do just that. And many young people are influencing their parents and grandparents as to the importance of plant-based diet.
Thank you so much.
We have one last question from your... just a quick question, please. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Here. Sorry. Actually, further back is probably better because, yeah.
Hello, sorry. Thank you very much, Jane. I wanted to ask, if I'm not mistaken, you were only 26 when you went to Gombe to study the chimpanzees. And I wanted to know how you had the courage to take a step like that at such a young age and being a woman in the establishment.
No.
She's saying, how did you manage to take that courage at the age of 26 to go to Gombe?
It wasn't courage. It was my dream come true. So no courage. Let's do one more question.
Sure. Let's take one from this end, please.
That's what I thought. We've done nothing over here.
Okay.
A very good evening to you, ma'am. Well, I have a bit of a personal question. I understand that you've dedicated your entire life to this most wonderful cause that is beyond our wildest imaginations. I wanted to know what kind of an impact this has had on your personal relationships with family, with friends, connecting the two worlds when you have pretty much isolated yourself, living in the forests and giving it your all. I just wanted to know what it does in terms of, I guess you do belong to the wild. That is where you feel at home. But what about home back where you were born?
Okay, well, actually, I'm really lucky. I can combine everything. In between these tours, 300 days a year, I'm on the road. In between, I go back to my home where I grew up in England, where my sister lives permanently with her family, And that's where, all the books I read as a child, Mowgli and Tarzan, and the trees I climbed are all there. Twice a year, I get to Tanzania, where my grandchildren are. And so I manage to maintain contact with family. And then, the Roots and Shoots groups and JGI, that's my family as well.
So I had a really funny question. So you were bitten by animals ever in all the time? Were you ever bitten by animals?
Bitten by an animal. Have I been bitten by an animal? Well, I've been bitten by mosquitoes. No, I haven't been bitten by a dog or a cat. I certainly haven't been bitten by a chimpanzee. Probably wouldn't be here by now if I had been, because, they can be pretty grim. No, I've always had an amazing kind of relationship with animals, and I was born that way, You can do one more question.
Okay. Right here, but I think we need to take some from the back there. 1, 2, 3. Yeah? 3 questions, Jane.
3 questions, okay.
Hello, ma'am. First of all, I really need to tell you that I am a researcher today because of you. And I am really, really thankful for all the women in science before, but especially you. And I wanted to ask you that as a young researcher, somebody who's just starting out in science, could you give me some advice as to what my outlook towards science should be in order to have a meaningful contribution to the world?
What something should be? Well, I think, honestly, your outlook towards science should be to think of science as a way of understanding the world. How do you understand the world? And I think it's really important not to be constricted by some of the textbooks, some of the things that you're taught. But it's jolly difficult, because if you want to get your degree, if you want to move on, if you want to make a career, you sometimes have to say, okay, I will go along with scientific thinking. But say to yourself, for now, later on, once I've got my degree, once I've got my job, then I can speak right the way I actually feel.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Good evening. When we work with children, we find it very easy to sensitize them because they have very good concepts and they have that inbuilt love for nature. But we find a great difficulty when we are trying to work with educators and teachers. We would like some tips, ma'am, from you. How do we inculcate this spirit in the teachers and educators? Thank you.
Well, actually, doing teacher workshops, we do in many different countries where we have Roots and Shoots, we do teacher workshops. And many teachers come and we have a wonderful time, and they understand about the importance, and this is what's so important, getting young people out into nature. Because if you don't understand something, then you can't love it, and if you don't love it, you won't save it. And so today, one of the big problems that I see around the world, everywhere, is people getting more and more and more divorced from nature. And, it's because of technology, and people are on their cell phones, people are on, all these gadgets all the time, and they're not getting into nature. And we now have absolute proof that nature, being in nature, is important for our mental and physical health. In Japan and Canada, maybe other countries too, doctors can actually prescribe time in nature. That's an actual doctor's prescription. And we know for sure that for small children, time in nature is beneficial for their psychological development. So that's what we're trying to do in Roots and Shoots and many other groups as well, to find ways to connect children, but adults too, back into nature. Because it's not only that we're part of the natural world, we depend on it. We depend on it for food, for clothing, for water, for everything. What do we depend on? Healthy ecosystems. And it's ecosystems that we are gradually destroying around the world. So this reconnection with nature is tremendously important.
Hi, ma'am. I'm Anurag. I have a question. It's a bit of scientific and somewhere similar to philosophy. Somewhere science has concluded with the theory of Darwin that we have evolved from a lot of species. And a lot of philosophers say that the human form is the last. I was watching a documentary that somewhere we are all curious beings. We have a lot of questions. We don't know how our existence is. So far, ma'am, what's your conclusion? Like, what do you have, one last thing, what do you have, how you have concluded the curiosity, the existence, everything, the manifestation, or from where we have all evolved?
What have we evolved from?
According to Darwin.
Originally we started off with single-celled organisms. And if you're going to be talking about the conflict between religion and science, I never saw a conflict, nor did my mother, nor did Louis Leakey. But the reason Leakey wanted me to study chimps was because he believed, as is generally believed now, about 6 million years ago, there was an ape-like, human-like creature. And from that ape-like, human-like creature, humans developed along this pathway, and chimpanzees developed along a different pathway. But he argued that if Jane sees behavior that's the same, similar, between chimps today and humans today, possibly that behavior was already in the common ancestor, and we brought it with us on our 2 evolutionary pathways. He was interested because he was looking for the earliest, remains of the earliest humans. And so, because of what I discovered with the chimps, he found it easier to kind of guess how some of these early humans, like Homo habilis, might have behaved. But, I see no conflict between religion and science.
Thank you so much, Jane. I think we should, Jane would like to share a very special film with you.
Yes, but before I show the last film, may I tell one short story? Because it's something which I feel is very symbolic about Roots and Shoots. And this is the first group of Roots and Shoots that was formed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And it was a group of children aged about 12 to 14. And there were 15 of them. And where the Roots and Shoots group is Eastern Democratic of Congo, DRC, where all the minerals are. There's always armies conflicting, fighting each other. It's a very violent place. So this little group of Roots and Shoots decided for their first project, they had seen a hill, and they discovered it used to be a sacred hill used to be covered with trees, and they wanted to put the trees back because the hill had been denuded. So their mentor realized, well, the hill was further away than they thought, it was bigger than they thought, it was probably impossible, but he didn't want to dampen their enthusiasm. So he went to his forester friend and got saplings donated. Then he had to go to the resident militia and ask the colonel for permission. And the colonel said, well, it's a stupid idea. They obviously can't do this, but I suppose there's no harm in it. But I'll have to send soldiers with you. So imagine this little group sets off, these little kids clutching their sapling, and I suppose something to dig with. 4 big, burly Congolese soldiers with AK-47 rifles over their shoulders. An absurd situation. Anyway, they trek through the forest, they get to the hill. It's much further than the children thought. They're tired, but they nevertheless start trying to dig holes for their trees. Well, the youngest child finds it really difficult, and she starts to cry. The ground is too hard. She can't dig the hole. Within about 10 minutes, one of the soldiers leans his gun against a tree and goes to help the little girl. And within the next 10 minutes, all 4 soldiers had laid aside their guns and were helping the children plant trees. Yes.
If you'll just wait for a minute, I'd like to invite on stage Katie Bugley and Amy Fernandez to please present a token of their appreciation to you. Let me take that mic from you. Thank you. Jane, would you like to sit here while they show this one? Let me show behind you, won't block it.
Yeah, I want to move this.
Okay. Can we move this?
But I need the mic.
Yes, I have the mic for you.
We've got the mic. Okay, so I told you that later you would be seeing that it's not only humans who have an indomitable spirit. I mentioned earlier that we have the largest sanctuary in Africa for orphan chimpanzees whose mothers were killed for the illegal bushmeat trade or the illegal wildlife trafficking. And this little piece of film shows one individual. Her name is Wunda. She arrived at the sanctuary when she was just a small infant, badly wounded by the bullet that killed her mother. And our wonderful veterinarian, Rebecca, managed to save her life. So Wunda was introduced to other chimps, and her life progressed. And then she got really, really sick again. And once again, Rebecca saved her life. She gave her the first chimp-to-chimp blood transfusion in Africa. And so the government gave us these 3 large, beautiful islands. And Wunda was considered to be one of the chimpanzees who was fit to be introduced into the semi-wild. And so this little short film shows Wunda being introduced onto this island. And I want to beg you one thing. When you see what happened, it was one of the most magic moments of my life. And I want you to try and imagine that you're there with me. And I could just hear the sound of the river rushing by, and I could hear the sound of birds and the wind in the leaves. And it was very quiet and very magical. So try not to applaud, try to feel you're with me in this incredible moment that will always remain one of the most amazing things that's ever happened to me. This is in the way, but I can't help it. This is a really exciting moment for me. The Jane Goodall Institute's Chimpunga Chimpanzee Rehabilitation Center in the Republic of Congo has for years been caring for infants whose mothers were killed, mostly for the illegal bushmeat trade. Many of them are now fully grown. Recently, we acquired 3 large forested islands on the beautiful Kwilu River, where we can release many of the chimpanzees from our overcrowded center. In here is Wunda, and she nearly died, but thanks to Rebecca, she came back from the dead. And here she is about to come out into this paradise. She's the 15th chimpanzee to get her freedom here. And we hope ultimately to have about 60 on the island. Today is the first time I've met Wunda. I talked to her on the boat, trying to reassure her. She must have wondered what was happening. None of us could predict exactly what she would do once the cage door opened. It was a very, very touching moment. One of the most amazing things that's ever happened to me. The warmth of her embrace is something I shall never forget. For Wunda and all the other chimpanzees we're working to bring here, Chinzula Island will provide a wonderful forest home where they will be cared for and safe. So, to end up that story, our chimpanzees are all on birth control because we just don't have space. And in all the years, like about 15, only 2 females have had their birth implant go wrong. One of them was Wunda. She gave birth on her island to a healthy little male, a little boy, and we've named him Hope. So we all have hope, don't we? We need to hope. If we lose hope, we fall into apathy. If we fall into apathy, the human race is doomed. So we need hope. But also people say to me, well, what can we do? What can we do? What can I do? I think it's a concerted effort that's going to make a difference. And I found that the young people in Tanzania, the Roots and Shoots groups, they were getting together at the end of, when we bring them together to share ideas and projects and so on. And they were standing together and saying, together we can change the world. And I said, yes, we can. We know what to do. We know the solutions. But do we have the will? So then they started saying, together we can, together we will. And I said, yes, because together we must. So So I would like, if you believe in this, I would like it that you join me and really put your heart into saying, together we can, together we will, because we must change the world. So can we do that? Can we try? Like 1, 2, 3, together we can, together we will, because we must change the world. Should we try once more? Why don't you all stand up? Been sitting a long time. So now, let's try again. Together we can, together we will, together we must change the world. Thank you.